So she's been vegan for about 6 years now. She orders the burger. This burger arrives. And it looks like a burger. It tastes like a burger. She eats it, and no animal had to die for her burger. She asked the waiter to make sure. The cells to create that very meaty burger were taken from a biopsy, and then the rest happened in a lab. She finishes it and then sits with the question she's been avoiding. Does this count? And then she's not sure if she hopes the answer to the question is yes or no. So today we're talking about fake, real meat. And it's from the process of cellular agriculture, or as we know it colloquially, lab-grown meat. Scientists, they take a small biopsy from a living animal, whether it's a pig, a chicken, or a cow. The animal is not harmed during the process of getting this biopsy. And then those cells are put into a bioreactor with nutrients and growth factors, where they multiply into muscle tissue. And what comes out is chemically and nutritionally identical to conventional meat. But there was no slaughtering of animals and thus no animal deaths. The first cultivated meat products approved for sale was in 2023. Mission Barns, a San Francisco company, sold the cultivated pork meatballs at Berkeley Bowl in California for the first time in November 2025. And they were set on sale for like $14 a pack. I don't know if that's a lot of money or if that's comparable to meatballs in California, but I guess it seems so, maybe. But that point was significant because it was the first time we had a retail sale of this cultivated meat in America, well, United States. I don't know if it's actually sold anywhere else just yet, because there's actually not too much information about it. It seems to be something that there was a lot of hype for at one point, but then nothing really went on sale. I don't think it's very easy to get your hands on this meat just yet. I think there's a lot of paperwork that these companies are still trying to do to get this meat onto the market. So the science might be there, but the ability to sell it is not there yet. So how I see veganism is it's doing two things at once. It's a philosophy and also a diet. And if we look at it from the outside, they produce very similar behaviors. So you don't necessarily question or separate them. You believe animals shouldn't be exploited, so you didn't eat them. The belief and the action were kind of the same move. A 2022 systematic study in Frontiers Psychology journal analyzed 26 academic studies on vegan identity and found vegans themselves consistently define veganism as a political philosophy, specifically the rejection of animals being a commodity. And it's not just a dietary choice. In 2020, the United Kingdom Employment Tribunal ruled that ethical veganism is a protected philosophical belief under the Equities Act, legally distinguishing it from dietary preference. So the idea of not eating meat was a refusal, a position, an argument made every time you sat down to have a meal. Lab-grown meat is now a technology that's kind of forced open this argument, because you're now vegan, and then the meat arrives, and you have to decide. So I'm going to look at both sides of this argument here. Okay, so say you eat the lab-grown meat. But you became vegan because of what happens to animals. The conditions that they're kept in, the slaughtering of the animals, and the scale of this operation throughout the world. That didn't sit right with you. You couldn't live with yourself contributing to this. Now, something exists that stops that entire process. There are millions of animals that are killed every year for food. I'm specifically talking about land animals, so pigs, cows, chickens, those. And most of those animals don't live, I don't know how you would deem an animal's life a nice life, but a lot of those animals don't see daylight. They're kept in these big warehouses like they're products or merchandise ready to be sold. And most of them are born into conditions that are specifically designed to extract maximum yield out of their bodies before they ultimately die. And this is what the vegan diet was refusing to fund or to be a part of. Not the hypothetical idea, this lived reality. Cultivated meat, it stops this. The animal gets a biopsy, but still lives. The cells, they grow in a lab. Nothing is slaughtered. At scale, the farms are becoming more and more empty because they don't need so much livestock. The kill floors, they close down. The suffering that was happening to those animals, the specific physical daily suffering of these animals that ultimately ended in death decided by a human, is finished, gone, doesn't exist anymore. And their philosophy, these vegans, was trying to end that harm. And if you were vegan with that, you really disagreed with this that was happening, your philosophy was, I am trying to mitigate the harm against animals. Now, if the harm ends through technology rather than persuasion, the philosophy that they had hasn't been compromised. It's been achieved. Eating the lab-grown meat burger is the reason you became vegan. And it's finally working. You got what you were advocating for. No animals are being killed, and they're not suffering. So eating the lamb-grown meat is a nutritious meal for what you stood for, and you won. You did the thing. Money went into the science to stop killing the animals. So it's a great achievement to eat that meat burger as a vegan. So let's say you don't eat the lab-grown meat burger, and your reasoning is because the harm didn't stop. It just maybe relocated a little bit, because here, the animal is still the raw material. Cells are still taken from its body to produce something designed entirely for human consumption. The desire being satisfied when you eat the lab-grown meat is still the desire to eat flesh. But you can say that the exploitation is still there. It's just maybe a little bit harder to see. But there's something deeper in this. Maybe the philosophy was never about killing. It was about the relationship. The one where humans decide that animals exist to serve their appetite, and then find increasingly efficient ways to do that. And lab-grown meat is a more efficient way to actually do that. Same kind of relationship, just now optimized, right? And eating it doesn't resolve the conflict. It kind of just like papers over it. The animal is still a resource. You're still consuming the product of that relationship. The process being cleaner doesn't change what the process is. Okay, I've given both sides of the argument, at least as to how I see it. Well, one thing that I respect in veganism and the commonality in both of these arguments is that people care about animals. And both sides are trying to work out what that means to care for animals. But each argument reaches a different conclusion from very similar facts. And I don't think either way should be shunned for this. I just think it's an interesting discussion. I don't know where I sit on this. I think it's important context to note that I am not a vegan in this discussion today. So if I've got something wrong or I've misunderstood something about it, please let me know, correct me. But I think it's a very interesting discussion and debate that we are going to have going forward. And I think I'm very much okay with people giving an individual answer on what they feel. Seeing or saying, oh, I'm vegan, but I eat lamb-grown meat, as much as it sounds like a contradiction, I don't think it actually is, at least from, you can see in my thought process here. But yeah, let me know what you think. Anyway, check you on the next one.